the day that we become silent about things that matter. Would you agree? And so we're here because we refuse to be silent, right? So far, so good. That's half the choir. Here's the song. It is a call and response. I'm going to say somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on, and your job is to say, far too long. It's gone on, far too long. It's gone on. Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on. And the last part is simple. We'll all sing, and we won't be silent anymore. So on that part, can we just pump a fist? We won't be silent anymore. All right, real quick, I'm going to give it to you one time. You catch on, you jump in, and we're going to raise the roof on it, okay? All right, here we go. Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you, it's gone on far too long. Oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. All together. And we won't be silent anymore. We got that? Here we go, real quick. Sopranos, altos, tenors, bass, baritone. I only sing in the shower, all together. Oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on. I tell you, it's gone on. Oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear? Somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you, it's gone on. Oh, somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on. And we did you know somebody's stealing our wages, and it's gone on? Yes, it's gone on. I tell you, it's gone on. Yes, somebody's stealing our wages, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. Don't you know somebody's been lying to the people, and it's gone on? Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you, it's gone on. Yes, somebody's been lying to the people, and it's gone on. And we, oh, you sounding good right now. Yes, somebody's hurting our families, and it's gone on. Yes, it's gone on. I tell you, it's gone on. Oh, somebody's hurting our families, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. Can we do one more? Don't you know somebody's hurting our children, and it's gone on? Yes, it's gone on. I tell you, it's gone on. Oh, somebody's hurting our children, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent. Let's keep singing that part right there. And we won't. And we. I need you to kind of raise it up a little bit. And we. If you mean it, come on and pump your fists and sing it. And we won't be silent anymore. One more time, and we're going to hold it out this time. And we won't be silent. Watch me. Anymore. You're a wonderful choir. Wonderful choir.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please welcome Dr. Jens Fredrickson.
Good afternoon and welcome to the historic campus of Fisk University. My name is Jens Fredrickson and I serve as the Executive Vice President here at Fisk. I'd like to take just a moment to welcome a few of our special guests here today. Senator Sanders, we're delighted you're here. Reverend Barber, it's a pleasure having you on campus. And Representative Jones, well, I'll let you in on a little secret. He's on campus all the time, but it's still the greatest pleasure. To other speakers, thank you so much for being here. And finally, as a point of privilege, greetings to our Fisk trustees and our trailblazing gymnastics team that are here with us today. Before I close this welcome, I'd like to express that as much as Fisk is rich in history, it has always been an institution with at least one foot in the future, and that future being a better future for all. Justice, equality, empowerment, safety, and inclusion are transcendent values that impact every facet of our lives. Fisk has always been and will always embody a haven for these values and their perpetual cultivation and dissemination. Welcome to Fisk. Thank you.
Thank you. Please welcome Alana Royale.
Hey everyone, I wore a blazer today. Regretting this choice, not regretting my decision to be here today. Thank you so much everyone for being here. Good evening to all of you and happy Pride, Nashville. It is my absolute honor to stand here today alongside these pivotal figures in the fight for equity, liberation, and justice. Not to mention, we are also on what I would consider to be sacred ground. Fisk University here, where a generation of civil rights icons first planted roots of a movement. I'm supposed to be on my way to Minneapolis right now to start a tour tomorrow, but this event really took precedence over a gas station in Iowa lunch. So I'm very happy to be here and not in the middle of Iowa right now, but I will be there tomorrow. My name is Alana Royale. I am a most of the time touring artist and a sometimes server at Henrietta Red right here in Germantown. As a musician and a restaurant employee, I do know a thing or two about being overworked and underpaid. I know about the financial anxieties of managing my career, my health, my mental well-being, and my mortgage. We are here today to discuss Tennessee minimum wage. Although I don't think you guys are that excited about it. Minimum wage, minimum. This $7.25 an hour is the legal threshold for which paying your employees, and this has not changed since July of 2009 on a federal level. 2009. How is it that nearly every facet of our lives has changed since 2009 and not once we have made an increase to federal minimum wage? Now I think if you've made it to this rally, I think you've got a clear idea of how this is not only a completely unacceptable statistic for one of the wealthiest nations in the world, but this is also going to perpetuate chronic stress on generations of Americans. And I know everyone in this room has felt that chronic stress of what it is to be in America and be grossly underpaid for what you do. One thing I want to make clear today is that when we talk wage gap, when we talk wage inequality, this is not simply a one-dimensional issue. When we have this discussion, it is impossible to avoid the racial and gender aspects. Women, and especially women of color, are disproportionately affected by this idea that we can make a living in this country for less than $8 an hour. In Tennessee, 36% of workers make $17 or less. When COVID hit and I was slowly coming to the realization that I was not going to be going back on the road or doing any live events for a very long time, I reluctantly started looking for jobs. I, like so many others, was living off of unemployment checks and was able to scrape by only because my mortgage was paused. And I understand that inherently right there, I've got a leg up over so many other people because I was afforded that luxury. I finally resigned myself to a job search, and I was absolutely gobsmacked to find that if I had been hired by any major chain retailer, Sephora, Ulta, Old Navy, Walmart, that I would not have been able to pay my bills with a 40-hour work week. This dream that we were sold, it does not work. It is a fallacy, and it is time for it to change. We are living in a broken culture of impossibly low wages and a tipping system built off the tenets of segregation and racism. Something must change, and just by showing up today, you have decided you are ready to be a part of this change. I deserve better, you deserve better, we all deserve better. Thank you. So I'm asking you today, a couple things here. Please make sure you are registered to vote. Please show up to the polls when you know you're registered. Please find a way to maintain your own physical and mental health so that you can continue on this fight for a truly fair and just America. Stay informed, stay hydrated, and remember, you can buy a record once and stream it forever. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please welcome Sam Lewis once again.
Hello, you all right? That was mediocre. You okay? There you go. Well done. My name's Sam Lewis. I normally speak with a guitar on, so this is incredibly awkward. But we're going to get through it if you just hang in there with me, all right? I'm extremely honored to be here today, to have been asked to come and share some of my songs and a little bit about myself, which I will keep it brief. I've called Nashville home for the last 14 years. It's the longest I've lived anywhere, which is quite an achievement, considering I was enrolled in nearly 20 different public schools before graduating from Carroll County High School in southwestern Virginia. My parents were both blue-collar workers. We moved from state to state, from one low-paying job to another, barely keeping the lights on. At 17 years of age, I had to be independent. This meant buying my own car, my own mobile phone. We called them mobile phones then. And maintaining them. I lived with my mother and her husband at this time. So all of us doing our parts to make ends meet felt more like roommates. My first job was at the local Burger King, making $4.85 an hour, which was minimum wage at the time. I quickly learned it was impossible to continue playing sports or attend after-school programs that I enjoyed for years while trying to work a part-time job. Certainly a relatable subject, I'm sure, for many of you. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning of what I call the sacrificial cycle. Underprepared for college and dependent on working to survive, I took a job at a furniture factory, but I lost my work when the work moved overseas. It took 10 years of working at Walmart before I could save just enough money and make the leap to be a full-time musician. A few more dollars an hour would have allowed me to pursue my dreams years earlier. I will never get that time back, but we don't have to make the next generation wait for years before they're reaching their dreams. The working poor of America need help, and we can do it. Corporate America can afford to pay a few extra dollars an hour. They will still profit, trust me. Too many of our elected leaders, the wealthy, and corporations have chosen poverty and homelessness for us all to dwell within. They act as if inequality is somehow morally justified, when we all know it is not true. Just voting isn't enough. Just showing up to rallies isn't enough. Show someone your heart. Expose your love, and let's change this world for the better. It's an unbelievable honor to share this evening with Senator Bernie Sanders, Reverend William Barber, and our own and fantastic state representative, Justin Jones. All great individuals with vision and passion to help the working classes of America. They can't do it alone. We have to help them. We have to vote. We have to show up and be counted. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now please welcome Miss Honey Harris to the stage.
I am living proof you can be old and still be fabulous. Okay. I'm Honey Harris. I want to say welcome, sweet lambs and gentle giants. Thank you for being here, most powerful. I'm used to little bitty babies, but I see everybody as somebody's baby. Okay. I am a paraprofessional with MNPS schools. 20+ years fighting this fight for a fair wage. Okay? I work for Metro, and it has been a dog fight, and you guys know it. I've been on city council. I even threatened them that I will be standing on the corner begging for change if they didn't do something about this wage. We finally got $17 an hour. It went from 15 to 17 to 18. Okay? And that's for support staff for schools. It took our union, SCIU, fighting for us to make this happen because they didn't give us anything. You guys went to public school, some of you have children that you've entrusted to public school. Understand, we are there from the time the doors open to the time the doors close. And I love my teachers, sisters, and brothers, but understand something. The pandemic proved they can't do it without me. They can't. Can't do it without me. So I want to live and play in Nashville just like everybody else. I am a mom of a 29-year-old MMPS graduate and an 11-year-old current MMPS student. So that's 17-year difference, and I've been in this fight, and I'm gonna stay in this fight. Understand, we need you to vote. If you have your child in public schools, we need you to be on PTO. We need you to show up at city council. We need to show up at school board. We need you to show up every time the school door opens and you're not working. We need you to show up because parents have the power. Parents are the voters. You are the first and the best advocate for your children. Understand that. And I'm gonna tell you, I need you to support me because I'm supporting your babies. And when you vote and you stand and you say, Miss Honey needs to be able to pay her mortgage while she's feeding my child, while she's loving on my child, while she's educating my child, she needs to be able to pay her bills too. As you guys very well know, they've said 725 in Tennessee. Nashville is the it city. Let's show them. We're gonna start right here. Give a livable wage to people who live and work in this state. We want to be known not just for the place to play. We want to be known for the place where they pay. Okay? Okay? I want to thank Justin, my beautiful escort. I want to thank Reverend Barber, all of you guys and everybody's here who organized this event. And when you see me standing on a corner with my MMPS shirt, take some pictures and say, I know her, you need to pay her. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Honey. Now, folks, please put your hands together for Representative Justin Jones.
Ain't no power like the power of the people. Because the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people because the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people because the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people because the power of the people don't stop. That's what we're bringing here today. Thank you all for being here. We gather here not for one campaign or one candidate, but we gather here as a movement in a space that is very historic. I just want to ground us in where we are right now. We are in the same gymnasium where in 1960 Dr. King came to speak to the Nashville citizens and said, I came to Nashville not to get inspiration, but to, not to bring inspiration, but to get inspiration from the movement that is happening here. And I say in 2023, a movement is once again happening in Nashville and Tennessee. And as we look around today, I know that many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are fearful because look around, we are multiracial, we are intergenerational, we are from urban and rural communities. This is Tennessee, and we represent the future of Tennessee that they're so fearful of because it is inclusive. It is one that affirms human dignity. It is a Tennessee that will uplift our children so they can flourish. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention what today is. Today is National Gun Violence Prevention Day. And we have a movement being led by young people and parents and teachers and clergy saying that we want to live in a state where we have living wage jobs, where it's more easy to access a living wage job than it is to get an AR-15. That's the state we want to live in. It is emotional looking around and seeing you all because this is the revolution coming to Tennessee. And the reason why there's so much repression in Tennessee, the reason why the Republicans are so extreme in their attacks on our democracy is because there's so much revolution to quell in Tennessee, we see. That a movement is rising up in Tennessee that is to restore democracy, a multiracial democracy, to restore a Tennessee that lifts up dignity in the people of our children. That is the Tennessee that we're building together. We're rising together. We're rising together. We are rising together as a movement. This is the power that they're so fearful of. And so as we talk about wages, because that's what we're talking about, but we know that economic justice is a racial justice issue. We know that it's an immigrant rights issue. We know that's an issue of treating women and paying women equal. We know that's an issue of uplifting our LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters. We know that economic justice is connected to all of our fights. And we know that that's the issue that scares them most, this fusion coalition that my mentor, Reverend Barber, always talks about, this coalition of conscience that we're building in the South, the same Tennessee where Dr. King came to stand with sanitation workers. The same Tennessee. And 55 years later, we are still fighting for workers and our neighbors and our families and ourselves to be treated with dignity in a state where we have corporate bailouts for a new Titan stadium. We have money to afford to give FedEx tax incentives for their fuel, but we don't have enough money to pay people a living wage. We default to $7.25, and we say you cannot survive off $7.25. We are fired up and we are fed up, and we're not going to take it anymore. Just this session, we passed a budget. I shouldn't say we because I didn't vote for it, and I know Sister Gloria, who's here, didn't vote for it. A budget led by the state legislature that was not uplifting working class people. An immoral budget that was more about pandering to corporate donors than it was to than uplifting the voices of our constituents, the voices of people of Tennessee. And so we said, hell no, we cannot vote on something like this because it's not going to make sure the people in our community can live with dignity. It's not going to make sure the people in my district who are our bus drivers, our hotel workers, those who are the heartbeat of Nashville are treated with dignity. So how could I vote on a budget that was more about giving FedEx jet fuel tax incentives than about giving people a living wage and fighting for affordable housing and fighting for our teachers to be paid with dignity? And so we know that as Uncle Bernie, Brother Bernie is here, is going to be talking about the federal level. We know that we also must fight at the state level because that state capitol is walking distance from here. And they're so fearful of you showing up that they ended session early this year. They ended session 3 weeks early because they saw the power of this movement that is happening, that they were afraid. They were afraid of us coming together. But here's the message that they didn't get. Here's the message that we have to remind them of each and every time. Cameron Sexton, the speaker. William Lambert, the Republican Majority Leader. This is the message I'm going to say to them, is that we're fighting for your children too. We're fighting for your people too. The people in Cookeville, the people in Crossville, the people in Hendersonville, the people in Sumner County. We are fighting for your people too. And so as we leave this rally this summer, we will be traveling to these districts around our state. We hope you join us. We hope you stand with us because there's more of us than them. There's more of us than them, those of us who are fighting against these starvation wages, those of us who are fighting for human dignity, those fighting for a new South. You know, segregationists had a saying that the South will rise again. I say, let's rewrite that. The South will rise anew. The South will rise anew. We are rising as a new South, as a new Tennessee, as a new Nashville, as a new Memphis, as a new Knoxville, as a new 10 Mile, Tennessee, wherever you're from, Chattanooga. We are rising together to build a new South, and that is a South that is worth fighting for. It's a South that will redeem this state. It's a South that will redeem this state. We are going to lift up our people. Because yes, Tennessee is the birthplace of the Klan, but it's also the birthplace of the Nashville student movement. It's also the same Tennessee where Highlander Folk Center was, where civil rights leaders across the nation would come. It's also the Tennessee that desegregated Clinton. It's also the Tennessee where the people saw the buses burn. They said, we'll continue the freedom rides. We are that same Tennessee. We come from a legacy of liberation. We are a people of progress, and we must reclaim the narrative. We must reclaim our state and lift together to make sure our people can rise. So, my friends, I'll just leave you with this. Is that we are fed up. And when you're fed up, it's time to rise up. And when you want to rise up, it's time to raise up the wages. Let's go forward together, my friends. Let's build this movement. Let's stand together, and let's put those on notice at the state legislature that your time is up. That you are in the find out portion of our movement. That you messed around with working class people, and now it's time to find out what happens next. That you messed around with the workers. Now it's time to find out what's coming next. That you messed around with our communities, and it's time to find out what comes next as we're standing together. And so thank you all for being here. We're going to keep rising together and working together, and it's going to take all of us, not one of us, but it's going to take us standing together across issues, black, brown, and poor white people standing together to let them know that this politics of fear and division that they try and sow by banning books and banning history is not going to work, because we know what it's about. It's about divide and conquer, and we're done with that foolishness. Power to the people. Power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Now put your hands together for Bishop William J. Barber II, founding director of the Center for Public Theology and Public Policy at the Yale Divinity School.
Dr. T, can you bring that over? Well, it looks like the South has risen. But I don't know if this microphone has. You are witnessing a third reconstruction. It's good. You're witnessing the third reconstruction right now. And the reason why there's so much resistance, would you hold this? Reason why there's so much resistance is because they used to say in South Africa, only a dying mule kicks the hardest. When Senator Sanders called and asked me would I join him on a nation tour starting in the South, the answer was a quick yes. He said, Pastor, I need you to do some teaching about why this is a moral issue. And I want to start tonight from two texts from the Bible. In the Old Testament, the prophet Jeremiah said, woe unto him or her who builds their palace by unrighteousness his upper rooms by injustice, making his own people work for nothing and not paying them for their labor. Isaiah 10 says, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights and make women and children their prey. Jesus in his first sermon said, you must preach good news to the poor, and the word poor in Greek is patokos. It means those who've been made poor by economic exploitation. And then later in the epistles, it simply says, the laborer is worthy of their hire. Would you say that? The laborer is worthy of their hire, of their money. In every age, moral people have had to rise up and decide to make the moral case that things have to change and injustice has to move. Our national constitution, flawed as it may be from the beginning, but it does say that we must establish justice. It says nothing about poverty wages. And poverty wages are not establishing justice. Poverty wages establish injustice. Our Declaration of Independence says that when there has been a long train of abuses, it is the very duty of the people, their right, to overthrow that government and provide a new government. I come to tell you that low wages and refusal to pay people a living wage is a form of political abuse. Our federal government has not raised the minimum wage in 14 years. During the pandemic, we called low-wage workers essential, but refused to pay them a living wage, refused to give them paid sick leave, refused to give them health care. We treated them like they were expendable. We said, yes, you're essential, but then we treated them like they're expendable while corporate profits rose. And CEO pays continued to rise, and Congress over these years have given themselves a raise. The Constitution of this state, you ought to read it sometimes. I'm convinced many of the people in your state house, they haven't. The Constitution of this state makes it clear that our liberty depends on people who decide things have to change and injustice has to move. It says in Article 1, Section 2, that the government being instituted for the common benefit, the doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd. What that means, if folk are using government to step on you and you don't fight back, then you are sillier than they are. And so in every age, there comes a time when people have to rise and decide things have to change and injustice has to move. In 1935, amidst the Great Depression and labor strikes and the Harlem riots, Langston Hughes turned his pen into a moral instrument and a weapon to fight injustice, and he wrote these words, "Oh, let America be America again, the land that has never been yet and yet must be, the land where every man is free, the land that is mine, the poor man, the Indians, the Negro, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, and whose plow at the reins. Oh, yes, I say it plain, America has never been America to me, but I swear this oath that America will be." Langston Hughes knew what we must know now, that in every age, a moral people have to rise up and decide to make the moral case that things have to change. Say, have to change. And injustice has to move. In the face of unchecked greed and inequality in the Gilded Age, Mother Jones, who traveled Tennessee and Kentucky and West Virginia, she was asked about why she fought so hard for union rights and for wages. And she said, "You mourn the dead, but you fight like hell for the living." When Francis Perkins was labor secretary under FDR, she pushed him until Franklin Delano Roosevelt said at a fireside chat, "No business which depends for its existence on paying less than a living wage to its workers, has any right in this, could even continue in this country. Did you know that at the March on Washington, they were fighting for a $2 minimum wage, which indexed by inflation would be 15 to 17 today? Did you know that the night before Dr. King was shot, standing up for wages, standing up for garbage workers and sanitation workers, he said these words: "Nothing would be more tragic than for us to turn back now." And then he said, "Look, I'm a preacher. It's all right to talk about long white robes over yonder and all of its symbolism, but ultimately people want some suits and dresses and shoes down here. It's all right to talk about streets flowing with honey and milk over there, but God wants to do something about the slums and the poverty communities right down here." So whether through the testimony of Scripture, our Constitution, or the witness of justice servant leaders down through history, I've come to make it clear that minimum living wages aren't a far-left idea. A living wage is a fundamental moral issue. It's not about left versus right, conservative versus liberal, and moderate. Is simply about right versus wrong. Now, there are a lot of lies out here. And we have to challenge the lies that are used to block living wages. The Nobel Peace Prize in Economics a couple of years ago went to 3 economists who demonstrated with empirical data. Somebody say empirical data. Because you don't want to be loud and wrong. Empirical data. And they found out that raising the minimum wage to a living wage doesn't cost jobs, doesn't raise prices. In fact, more cash in the hands of working people actually helps the economy rather than tears it down. We got to take on the lies. Down here in the South, it's wrong that down here in the South, far too many politicians still use cultural wars to pit white workers against workers of color. And while they're pitting folk against one another, 50% of all workers in the South make less than a living wage. Don't fall for the tricks. Don't fall for the diversions. Don't fall for the deflections. You see, in the South, Dr. King said in Alabama, he said, the greatest fear of the Southern oligarchy is that the masses of poor Negroes and poor white folk would get together and form a political voting bloc that would fundamentally change the economic architecture of the country. But for what we are seeing today, it's not Trumpism. For the past 50 years, the Southern strategy has been used to use cultural wedge issues to pit white folk against black folk and brown folk and straight folk and gay folk and immigrants. They called it positive polarization. They actually said if we get caught, lie and say we didn't do it. But positive polarization. But what we've got to realize in this time now is that the same folk that are taking our voting rights are also blocking our living wages. The same folk that are denying our health care are also blocking our living wages. The same folk attacking the LGBTQ community is taking our living wages. The same folk trying to tell women what to do with their body are taking their wages. And we have got to decide if they are cynical enough to be together, we got to be smart enough to come together. And the South is key. Look around this room. The South is not really made up of red states or blue states. The South is a deliberately unorganized state, a deliberately divided state, but that's changing. That's why Senator Sanders is right to come south and make the case for living wage. 1/3 of the nation's poor live in the South. 1/3 of all poor white people live in the South. It's wrong that greedy people on Wall Street have gotten bailouts while many of you have gotten locked up when you simply stood for a living wage. It's wrong. It's wrong that the law still allows tipped workers to be $2.15 an hour, which is nothing but an extension of slave labor into the service industry. So whatever kind of worker you are, we say living wages now. We need moral clarity. Somebody say moral clarity. We got to cut through the neoliberal deceptions and the trickle-down deceptions and the moderate deceptions. Dr. King one time said moderates were the greatest enemies to the movement because they're more interested in order than they are in justice. And we have to cut through the lie that full employment is the answer, because slavery was full employment. When you have a lot of low-wage jobs being given to people, that is a moral contradiction. Low-wage jobs and full employment when you're working but you're not being paid. The moral priorities of extremists are so off that just last night they argued to the whole world that the way to save the world's economy and the nation's economy is to kick needy people off a food stamp. What a disgrace. We've got a moral crisis. And finally, low wages are not just wrong. They are deadly. Listen to me now. Did you know that 700 people were dying a day, 800 people were dying a day before COVID from poverty? Poverty during COVID, the poor died at a rate 3 to 5 times higher, whether you're in a poor white community or a poor black community. Not because COVID killed them, but because of all of the ways in which they did not have things or access because they were poor. Did you know that 330,000 people died during COVID, not from COVID, but from the lack of health insurance? And America is the only of the 25 wealthiest nations that doesn't offer some form of universal health care. A research team led by David Brady of the University of California, Riverside, broke the news last month. Poverty is the 4th leading cause of death in America. It's greater than homicide. It's greater than diabetes. It's greater than respiratory diseases. And it's greater than gun violence. And that's why it's so bad when preachers get up and try to justify injustice, because what they really are doing is saying so much about what God says so little and so little about what God says so much. A $7.25 poverty wage is a death wage. And when you refuse to raise the living wage, you are engaging in policy murder. People are beyond frustrated. Things have to change. No longer can we accept that before COVID, there were 140 million poor and low-wealth people in this country. 43% of adults, 53% of children, 26 million black people, 66 million white people, 73 million women, 68% of Latinos, more than 40 million workers making less than $15 an hour. We need living wages now. 46% of all the people in Tennessee are poor and or low income. That's 3 million people. 56% of your children, 48% of women, 1.6 million, 61% people of color, 1.1 million, 41% of white people in Tennessee, 2 million people. So workers, don't let up. Make them hear you. Make them see you. Make them feel your power. This is not about Democrat versus Republican. This is about doing right, and the right time to do right is right now. Oh, hallelujah. This is not even about black versus white versus brown versus Asian or versus native. Because when you make a poverty wage and you can't pay your light bill, we all black in the dark. When your child can't eat, they don't cry black. They don't cry white. They don't cry Asian. They cry hunger. We cannot allow corporate greed and political sellouts to tear the soul of this nation apart. This is our moral fight. We are fighting to save the nation's soul and the nation's substance. And it should have already taken place. Senator Sanders put it on the table during the pandemic, made the case. 49 Republicans and 2 Democrats voted to block nearly 50 million people, frontline workers, from getting health care. Let me tell you who they blocked. Health care workers, protective service workers, some cops, some fire people, cashiers, delivery drivers, machinists, merchandise store, restaurant workers, educators, food processors, sanitation workers. They blocked all of them. But my brothers and sisters, there's a message in all of that. If all of us get together, it's time. And the people have got to rise and decide that things have to change. It's time for things to change, and it's time for justice to make a move. Did you know that poor and low-wealth people now make up 30% of the electorate, Justin, in this country? And in the states where the margin of victory was within 3%, poor and low-wealth people make up 43% of the electorate. In fact, there's not a state in the South where if 25% of poor and low-income people who haven't voted in the past would choose to come together and say that things have to change and vote their power, that they couldn't determine every office in that state. And so it's time to fight now. It's time for living wages now, until families don't have to choose between rent and medicine. Living wages now, until people can know that they'll be all right. Living wages now. Is there anybody with me? You better understand, America. We're going to lobby in the halls of Congress now. If we got to lay down in the streets and in the halls of Congress to get the job done, we're going to do it now. We're going to turn out in record numbers at the polls, because it's now is the time. No more excuses. Say it. No more workers rejected. No more families hurt. Living wages. Now. Now let me close by telling you who you are. Harry Belafonte died, but he left us with a song. And it ought to become one of the songs of this movement. The song says, "We are the wave." It says, "The sea will wash against the rock, and the rock stands strong." The sea will wash against the rock, and the rock stands strong. But before too long, the rock is gone. The wind will blow against the stone, and the stone will stand strong. The wind will blow against the stone, but before too long, the stone is gone. Patience, gentlemen. Patience, sisters. The stone will soon give away. You know who you are? We are the flow. We are the wind, and soon the rock must go. We are the wave. We are the wind, and soon the rock must go. We are the wave. We are the wind, and soon the stone must go. What rock? What stone? The stone of injustice, the stone of voter suppression, the stone of low wages, the stone of denial of health care. You know who you are? We are the wind. We are the wave. We have the power. Soon, if we stay together. Soon, if we organize together. Soon, if we vote together. Black and white and Latino and Asian and Native and poor and gay and straight. We are the wind. We are the wave. We are the wind. We are the wave. And soon, 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 the rock must go. Forward together. Forward together. Forward together. Forward together.
Thank you, Bishop Barber. Now, please put your hands together for the senator from Vermont, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, Nashville. Let me thank all of you for coming out this evening. This is a wonderful turnout, and we appreciate you being here. Let me thank the many thousands of people all across this country who are looking at you right now on live stream. Let me thank the musicians, Sam Lewis and Allison Russell. Let me thank Alona Royale, Sam Lewis, Honey Hirth, Representative Justin Jones, and let me thank one of the great fighters for social justice in this country, Reverend William Barber. The reason that we are here tonight is not complicated. In the richest country in the history of the world, we demand an economy that works for all, not just the few. We demand an economy that is based on justice. And you just heard the Reverend speak about the history of the struggle for justice. That's what we want. And we want an economy that is not based on the extraordinary level of greed, uncontrollable greed that we see today. You know, in Vermont, and I am sure in Tennessee and all over this country, we have a serious problem with addiction. We have drug addiction and alcohol addiction, tobacco addiction. We have all kinds of addiction. But maybe the most egregious addiction of all is that our ruling class is seething with greed. They cannot get enough. $5 billion in wealth is not enough. $10 billion, they don't know how to spend their money. As you know, some of them now, after they buy their islands and they buy their personal planes, they're now off to Mars and outer space. They don't know how to spend their money, while 600,000 Americans are homeless. We demand an economy that understands that health care is a human right, not a privilege. We demand a health care system whose goal is not to make tens of billions for drug companies and insurance companies, but to provide quality health care to every man, woman, and child in this country. We want a health care system in which every American can walk into a doctor's office whenever he or she is ill and not worry about the bill, can go to a hospital, not worry about coming out bankrupt. Now, some people may tell you Some people may tell you this is a radical idea. It exists in virtually every major country on earth. If Europe can do it, if Canada can do it, you know what? United States of America can do it as well. We demand an economy in which all of our people can live in decent, affordable housing. Wherever I go, in my state of Vermont or all over this country, what I hear is people simply cannot afford housing. That true here? Okay, well, it's true in Vermont as well. And communities cannot even attract the nurses or the firemen or the cops that they need because there is no affordable housing. So maybe, just maybe, instead of spending tens of billions more on the military, how about building the affordable housing that we need? We demand an economy that makes sure the elderly in our society can retire with dignity. Half of older Americans have nothing in the bank as they approach retirement. And you got some geniuses out there talking about cutting Social Security. Well, we're not going to cut Social Security, we're going to expand Social Security benefits. And understanding what Tennessee and Nashville have recently gone through, we demand a society in which we have sensible gun safety legislation. You know, I go around my state a lot. I go around the state of Vermont a lot, and I go into a lot of schools. And it is almost unspeakable. And frankly, it's one of the issues I don't like talking about because it is so horrific and so painful. But you go to schools, and kids go through all of these exercises in terms of what will happen if there's a shooter in a school. Can you imagine all over this country? It used to be that you went to school, it was a safe place, secure place. Now kids are scared to death about unspeakable crimes. So we have got to have the courage to stand up to right-wing extremists, do what the American people want, that is sensible gun safety legislation. And as Reverend Barber said so effectively, we are here today to state as emphatically as we can that in the year 2023, no one in America should be forced to work for starvation wages. I don't care where you are in America. I don't care if you're in the South, the North, the East, the West. You can't make it on $7.25 an hour. You can't make it on $9 an hour. You can't make it on 11 or 12 bucks an hour. We need in Congress to pass a minimum wage bill which has a livable wage. And as the chairman of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, which has jurisdiction over this issue, with you and with the American people, we're going to do everything we can to raise that minimum wage to at least 17 bucks an hour. Now, in my view, We can no longer, and I appreciate so much Reverend Barber putting all of this into a moral context. It's not political, it's not economic, it is moral. It is not moral when the billionaires get richer and working families struggle to put food on the table. And here is the reality, and I want you all to know it because you do know it. We don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about it in Congress. We don't talk about it in the corporate media. But here is the truth, and that is for the people on top, the economy today in America has never, ever been better. They have never had it so good. But for working class people, in many instances, our people are falling further and further behind as they struggle to pay their grocery bills, their rent, their health care bills. Today in America, and we don't talk about it very much, but it's time that we do. We have more income and wealth inequality now than ever before. Now you tell me the morality, the decency of 3 people on top owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 165 million people. How much do they need? How many homes do they need? How many islands do they need to buy when children in America go hungry? Today, while nearly 18 million American families are paying more than 50% of their limited incomes on housing. You all know those folks, right? There you go. And nearly 600,000 Americans are homeless. The top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90%. Today, while millions of ordinary workers are working longer hours for lower wages, the CEOs of the largest corporations now earn 400 times more than the people they employ. 400 times. And that is the largest CEO worker differential in the history of this country. When I was a kid, it was 20, 30 to 1. You know, CEOs always made more money than workers. Nothing new about that. 20, 30, 50 to 1. Now it is 400 times. And I want to tell you something else that is not talked about in Congress or in the media. And that is, since 1975, there has been a massive redistribution of wealth. You know, you hear our corporate friends, they're worried, oh, how terrible it is to redistribute wealth. Well, guess what? In the last 50 years, there has been a massive redistribution of wealth, but it's gone the wrong way. Over the past 50 years, more than $50 trillion in wealth has been redistributed from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. You got that? $50 trillion from the bottom to the top. Now today in America, and I'm sure I don't have to tell this to anybody here, 60% of our workers are living paycheck to paycheck. I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. Many of us today, many of you are living paycheck to paycheck. And I'll tell you what that means. Reverend Barber touched on it, because we don't talk about it enough. It means that every single day when you live paycheck to paycheck, when you are worried if you're going to be able to afford rent, when you're scared to death that if your car breaks down, you can't get to work, you're going to get fired. When you're worried if your kid gets sick, how are you going to afford a medical bill? And if, God forbid, somebody ends up in the hospital, how are you going to pay a $50,000 bill? People are worried and stressed out. And you know what the doctors tell us? Stress kills. Living paycheck to paycheck leaves you with no sense of security. All right? You got to hustle, you got to worry every single day. It takes a toll on your mind, it takes a toll on your body. You have no cushion to fall back on. No quality time to spend with your family where you can relax and not worry about what tomorrow is going to bring. And the result of all of this is rather incredible. We don't talk about it. It is that not only in America is life expectancy in general going down, the differential in years between working class and low-income people and the rich is growing wider. Poverty is a death sentence. Poverty is a death sentence. And we're standing here this evening to say we will no longer accept that. It is no great secret that here in Tennessee or in Vermont or any place else, the American people are angry. And sometimes, unfortunately, people are taking out their anger in a bad direction. Well, if you're angry out there, you have a right to be angry, but take it out on the people who are causing your family misery, not your coworkers. Don't take it out on people because their skin color is different than yours, or their sexual orientation is different than yours. Take that anger out on those greedy people on top who want it all at the expense of all working people. And one of the reasons that people are so angry has to do with the reality that the average worker in our country, I want you all to hear this, makes $50 a week less than he or she did 50 years ago after adjusting for inflation. Think about that for a moment. All of you have experienced all of the impacts of automation, of computer technology, of all of the explosions in technology that we have seen, which make each and every worker in this room more productive. And yet, after all of that increase in productivity, millions of workers are falling further and further behind. When all is said and done, real weekly wages for the average American worker today is lower than they were in 1973. Can you believe it? And that's the struggle that we have. Now, there are a lot of things that we have got to do, but at the top of the list is saying very clearly that if you are working 40 hours a week, you are not living in poverty. You've got to raise that minimum wage to $17 an hour. It is not acceptable that today, in the richest country in the history of the world, nearly 35 million American workers make less than $17 an hour. And it is a national disgrace. And as a member of Congress, I'm embarrassed to tell you, Congress has not passed an increase in the minimum wage since 2007, 16 years ago. Can you believe that? Think of what's happened in the last 16 years. Congress has not raised the minimum wage. So yes, together, we are going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, because in this country, a job should lift you out of poverty, not keep you in it. And one of the points I want to make to you this evening is that all of the ideas that I've been talking about, that Reverend Barber talked about, you know, our opponents, oh, these are radical ideas, unheard of. These are ideas that the American people believe in, that they want. We are not the extremists. They are the extremists in denying what the American people want. In poll after poll, the American people make it clear they want the minimum wage raised here in Tennessee, in Vermont, all over this country. But it is not just the polls. As a result of congressional inaction, cities and states all across this country are taking the low-wage crisis into their own hands. Congress is not acting to their credit. Cities and states are, and raising the minimum wage. In November of last year, nearly 60% of the people in Nebraska, my friends, is not considered a progressive state. 60% of the people in Nebraska, a state with a Republican governor and 2 Republican senators, voted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And we all know about Florida and their wonderful governor. In November of 2020, 61% of the people in Florida voted to raise the minimum wage in that state to $15 an hour. Today, 13 states have approved a $15 an hour minimum wage. And you know what? As a result of inflation, $15 an hour back in 2021 would be over $17 an hour today. So $17 is not a radical idea. According to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a living wage for working adults in Tennessee is $17.56 an hour. That is what an individual in a household must earn to support his or her family. So the time is long overdue for us to raise the minimum wage, and together we will do just that. And while we deal with the federal minimum wage, we must also address the scandal of the tipped wage, which has been stuck at $2.13 an hour for more than 30 years. Think it's time for a raise there? The restaurant lobby and the big money interests want to make sure that waitresses and waiters, people who work in restaurants, other service industries, earn starvation wages. We're going to stand up to them. We're going to raise that tip wage to the wage it should be. Brothers and sisters, the biggest impediment we face to change is not just the billions of dollars that big money interests put into politics in our corrupt political system. That's a real problem. It's not the biggest problem. Biggest problem is not just employers trying to break unions. That's a big problem. It's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem that we have gets back to something that Nelson Mandela said a long time ago. And he said that everything seems impossible until it happens. In other words, what the system, what the moneyed interests, what the establishment wants you to believe is you're powerless. They got all the money, they got all the power, they own the media, they can take your job and ship it to China tomorrow. You got nothing. And what we are here to say, Reverend Barber made this point better than I do, is that when they divide us up, they win. when we stand together, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, when we stand together as working people, gay and straight, at the end of the day, the 1% is very powerful. I would not deny that for a moment. I am not a mathematician, but I do know that 99% is a hell of a bigger number than 1%. And I'm here this evening in Nashville because I don't believe in the concept of red state or blue state. I really don't believe it. I believe that when working people come together, every state in this country could be a state of justice. So let me thank all of you here in Tennessee, because I know the politics are difficult. I do know that. And I know it's hard to stand up for justice. But I thank you all, and I applaud what you're doing. Let's go forward together. Let's transform this country. Thank you very much.